The Tamed Beast and the Roommate War. If you ask anyone who has actually read their Marx the following question, they would be absolutely stunned. Why would a proletarian regime, a party sworn to eradicate all exploitation, reawaken and nurture the very force it once condemned as the root of all evil on its own soil? Why is a socialist state actively cultivating its theoretical nemesis? It's a sharp question, and there is no dodging it. To answer it, we have to strip away all our naive illusions and return to the cold, brutal starting point left to us by history. Marx and Engels, with their absolute genius, gave us a scientific blueprint for human societal development. Feudalism birthed the bourgeoisie, bourgeois revolutions spawned capitalism, and capitalism, upon reaching its zenith, would be driven by its irreconcilable internal contradictions to forge its own gravediggers, the proletariat. They would sweep it into the dustbin of history via revolution, ultimately establishing socialism and communism. For those early steps, history has provided plenty of templates: the factories of Britain, the revolution in France, the Constitution of the United States. They all vividly showcase the bourgeoisie stepping onto the historical stage. But for that most crucial step, how a fully developed, mature capitalist society transitions wholly into a socialist one, the display case in the Museum of Human History remains strikingly empty. The dialectics of history played a bitter joke on us. All the socialist revolutions, Russia, China, Cuba, didn't happen in the financial hubs of London or New York. They erupted at the weakest, most backward links of the capitalist chain. These nations faced a massive, unavoidable dilemma that classical theory never fully fleshed out. After clearing away the rubble of feudalism and imperialism, we were left with an unfinished assignment. We didn't have the massive productive forces capitalism generates, yet we had to shoulder the immediate burden of building socialism. What were we supposed to do? Wait around for a bourgeois revolution that would never naturally arrive? Or dogmatically force the construction of pure socialism in a country dominated by peasant farming? True revolutionaries are neither passive bystanders waiting for doom, nor pedants reciting scripture. We were facing real, imminent questions of national survival. So an unprecedented strategic choice was made, and it was breathtakingly bold. Since history didn't hand us a socialist infant born naturally from the womb of capitalism, we decided to build a greenhouse and artificially accelerate the process. Instead of waiting for capitalism to mature and die out naturally, we actively invited it in. We locked it inside the iron cage of the dictatorship of the proletariat, forcing it in shackles to fulfill its only historical mission, rapidly developing the productive forces of society. We knew exactly what kind of monster we were unleashing. We knew it was greedy, brutal, and relentlessly dynamic. But at the time, we had absolutely nothing. We needed its vitality. We needed its dark magic, the same magic that, in less than a century of class rule, had created more massive productive forces than all preceding generations combined. We cast ourselves as the beast-tamers. We used its immense strength to break ground for us, while constantly keeping a tight grip on the whip and the gun, ready to put a bullet in the ugly, aging creature the second its strength gave out. And thus began this incredibly dangerous game of beast-taming. Everyone understood there were only two possible outcomes. Either we successfully master it, or it tears us to shreds. In its initial phase, our strategy achieved a spectacular victory. This caged beast of capital, driven by its innate greed for profit, sprinted through a century of Western industrialization in just a few decades. Skyscrapers pierced the clouds, goods piled up like mountains, and hundreds of millions were lifted out of poverty. All of this unfolded under the blinding sun we call economic growth. Some people got blinded by this glare. They started singing praises about how docile and efficient the beast had become. They were wrong, dangerously wrong. The beast was never tamed. It was just growing up. Today, it has reached its prime. It's muscular, its fangs are sharp, and its true nature is laid bare. It's no longer satisfied with being confined to a useful cage. It wants to reshape the entire economy and society itself, according to its own logic. It has completed its primitive accumulation, and now, it's starting to discard the very population it once relied on. The logic of capital dictates the pursuit of a higher organic composition, meaning replacing living labor with machines and tech. In its early days, it greedily soaked up the millions of laborers migrating from fields to factories. That was its demographic dividend. But now, it is coldly optimizing away the hands and feet it once needed through automation, AI, and monopolistic systems, creating a massive reserve army of surplus labor. To capital, this isn't a tragedy, it's efficiency. But to society, it is the root of profound instability. Capital is systematically reproducing its own antithesis, a proletariat that owns nothing but its freedom. Sure, this modern proletariat might be holding smartphones and wearing trendy clothes, but fundamentally, they are no different from the class Marx described. They don't own the means of production. They must sell their labor for a wage, getting the last drop of surplus value squeezed out of them. Even more fatally, capital is reproducing its insurmountable contradiction, the infinite expansion of productive capacity on one side, and the relative shrinking of the public's purchasing power on the other. It's eerily similar to the crisis-ridden Europe of the 19th century. The specter of economic crisis is circling above us. And unlike the United States, we cannot export these internal contradictions to the rest of the world. The American bourgeoisie, backed by its global military and financial hegemony, can simply lance the boil of its domestic crises and let the whole world bleed for it. Through the tidal cycles of the US dollar, carrier strike groups, and asymmetrical trade rules, they sustain a stable domestic middle class. And us? We don't possess, and we should never pursue, that kind of bloody hegemony. We rely on trade surpluses earned through hard work, but look at how fragile that is under the global system of imperialist hegemony. They can threaten our economic lifelines at any moment with a single embargo or financial strangulation. Because of this, all the internal contradictions generated by the logic of capital, the wealth gap, overproduction, class antagonism, cannot be exported. They can only accumulate, ferment, and seek an explosive release within our own borders. This puts us in an unprecedented predicament. The capitalist force we cultivated with our own hands has grown into a beast in its prime, yet we don't have a backyard to safely vent its destructive energy. Its massive power has no choice but to turn inward. As a result, a highly dramatic and incredibly dangerous scene is unfolding inside our republic. Under the single political roof of our socialist state, a bizarre spectacle has taken shape. Two fundamentally incompatible roommates are locked in a silent, fate-deciding war. On one side is capitalism in its prime. Its tentacles reach into every pore of the economy. Its logic, competition, and profit maximization has become the default mindset for so many. It's no longer content being a passive tool. It's eyeing the deed to the house. And it's been glaring murderously at its roommate, socialism, for quite some time. Anyone familiar with history knows that the moment capital gains even a temporary political or ideological upper hand, it will not hesitate to mobilize every resource to strangle the opponent that represents the end of its history. This isn't a guess, it's dictated by its class nature. On the other side is the youth of socialism. It holds the dominant political position. But let's be brutally honest, compared to its muscular roommate, the body of this youth isn't quite strong enough in daily economic practice. Its strategy seems theoretically sound. Endure, monitor, utilize, and wait for capitalism to age out. Then, use the power of the state to put a bullet in it. Sounds perfect on paper, but it ignores one critical question. Is this capitalism in its prime just going to sit around and wait to get old? Won't it use every ounce of its current strength to stop the socialist youth from growing up? Some naive folks think that because we've drawn economic red lines and pushed back with anti-monopoly measures, we're safe. Dead wrong. The most dangerous battlefield isn't the corporate boardroom. It's inside everyone's head. The gentlemen of the bourgeoisie always mock us for caring too much about ideology. They claim, the economy is everything, as long as life is good. That is their most insidious move. They try to disarm us ideologically, all while they wage a total ideological war every single minute. The erosive power of capital is 10,000 times more dangerous than any overt political opposition because it doesn't directly oppose socialist slogans. It exploits human nature, the desire for material enjoyment, the pursuit of personal achievement. It packages this as universal values, quietly implanting its core into our collective consciousness. The even grimmer challenge is our own legitimacy dilemma. For years, our regime's legitimacy has been significantly built on sustained economic growth driven by capital. We constantly preach, look, our lives are getting better. Objectively, every time we tout an economic achievement, we are indirectly touting the achievement of capital. The louder we cheer for economic leaps, the harder capital laughs in the shadows. It's hijacking our propaganda. And when we try to turn around and critique capital's exploitation, our voices sound pale. Why? Because the daily lives of the masses, their avenues for upward mobility, are already deeply embedded in a system dominated by the logic of capital. Ultimately, this leads to a schizophrenic ideological state. Official policies are filled with socialist rhetoric, while daily social practices strictly follow capitalist rules. In such an environment, could a youth raised on the milk of capital have already, deep down, adopted the values of its adoptive father? We can regulate the behavior of capital, but can we regulate its pervasive, formatting power? Will the rider who tries to tame capital eventually forget their original destination, spending all their energy figuring out how to ride faster, only to be carried in the exact opposite direction? Those who advocate for peaceful coexistence with capital, who think we can extract its benefits while avoiding its harms, are politically naive. Capitalism is not a machine we can dismantle at will. Its benefits and its diseases stem from the exact same heart, the logic of capital accumulation. If you accept its life, you must accept its deadly toxins. Look at the systemic pathologies this beast is born with. The logic of competition inevitably creates wealth disparity and monopoly. To win, capital must snowball endlessly. The result is staggering wealth at one pole and poverty at the other. The logic of profit inevitably leads to ecological destruction and human alienation. Treating rivers as free dumpsters and workers as calculable costs is the shortest path to maximum profit. The logic of infinite expansion inevitably triggers economic crises and leads to imperialism. When the domestic market is exhausted, its only way out is using financial strangulation and military threats to redivide the world. War is the continuation of capitalism. Wealth inequality, ecological disaster, the commodification of humanity. These are not skin conditions capitalism can cure. They are genetic defects deep within its marrow. Any attempt to tame it is merely managing its symptoms. Some short-sighted people look across the ocean and fantasize about taking the American path. The U.S. maintains its superficial stability not because it cured capitalism, but because it enjoys a historical, unreplicable privilege, global hegemony. It uses the dollar to make the world pay for its extravagance, and its military to secure resources. America's stability is sustained by external blood transfusions. This is the blood-paved road of imperialism. But today, history has slammed that bloody door shut. In a multipolar world, no center of power will tolerate the birth of a new global hegemon. Trying to become a second America to solve our internal contradictions is strategic suicide. It would drag us into a confrontation with the entire world, leading to a collapse faster and more brutal than America's. We are standing at an unprecedented historical chasm. Behind us is the doomed illusion of a capitalist empire. Ahead of us is the uncharted wilderness of a socialism that truly transcends capital. We have no other choice. The closed doors of the outside world have shattered our illusions of exporting our contradictions. It's not about how to better tame capital, it's about how to decisively transcend it. It's not about becoming another America. It's about pioneering a new path of modernization while surrounded by the capitalist world system. This standoff under one roof must have a conclusion. The youth of socialism will either suffocate spiritually under the erosion of capital, or it will gather its entire political strength to deliver the historical killing blow. Time is no longer on the side of those who wait.